In today's episode, we interview my good friend and sometimes neighbor, Luke McKinnon. Stand by, true believers. Here comes another episode of You're Not My Father. Welcome back to You're Not My Father, the best family-friendly podcast from Alaska, in this side of Anchorage, because we don't know what goes on the other side. I'm your host, Thomas Brando Greenman. I'm a father, a husband. Yeah, I think that's that. And my curiosity and mistakes have given me a world of experience that I want to share just with you and maybe even make you laugh. And so our podcast is made to help you learn something positive, something that you can apply to your life as a parent, kid, or otherwise. So without further ado, let's do this. Today's show is sponsored by procrastination. If you've got procrastination, I don't remember. Whatever. They don't pay us very well. Anyway, if you do want to pay us something and have us spread the word on your product, drop us a line at facebook.com/YNMF show. So today I'm interviewing my good friend and has been for a long time, Mr. Luke McKinnon. So we're going to be subjecting him to the fatherly interview questions that we've been recently working on. As if you've seen what are we talking about? You can listen to our most recent podcast with Ben Kitchens, where we did an interview with him. We're going to apply some of that knowledge that we've learned in that episode, and we're going to see what kind of wisdom we can pull out of Luke and see what's going on. So how are you doing today, Luke?
I'm doing all right. How you doing today?
Me, I'm doing great. And even if I wasn't, I would lie to you and say I'm doing great anyway. So tell our listeners a little bit about yourself. Where are you from and what do you do?
All right. Start with my name. My name's Luke McKinnon. I'm born and raised, born in Redding, California. Moved to Chico, California when I was 8 years old. Spent 32 years of my life down there before I made the great trek up north to Anchorage in 2009.
So everybody's got their own Alaskan story about why they came here. I don't know if I've shared mine, but would you care to share yours with us?
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. I'd love to share it. I came up here for a job in government field. Moved up here after working numerous different jobs over the years. Kind of no direction at that point, and got that nice government job and moved my way up north to Alaska.
So how did we meet? Your version of how we met.
Actually through my now ex-wife and your still wife.
Yes.
We met. We were living in the same apartment complex here locally, and our prospective wives at the time met each other through the dogs walking around, and then we got introduced.
Yeah, I think we had some common interest. I think about around that time Iron Man had came out, the original Iron Man movie. I can't remember if you and I went and saw it together. I kind of feel like maybe we might have.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But I was working, and I know you went off and you had to do some training and work or whatever. And then I think you and I watched the DVD for Iron Man after that. And then I think we got into playing Call of Duty. So it kind of segue from there. So yeah, we've known each other since, that's like 2008.
So in 2008, yeah, not 9. I was wrong on that.
Yeah. So it's been a while. So collectively he's known as Uncle Luke in our house. Sometimes Conan will punch him or other odd ways that he greets him. But anyway, so we were actually, before this podcast happened, we were actually having dinner in the form of breakfast. So breakfast is a family favorite meal around here. And, we don't get to spend that much time together. I mean, obviously, he's got his own life. I've got my own life, but we try to, get together, I would say probably on average, try to at least once a week. Yeah. Doesn't always happen, but we'll hang out and do whatever. Sometimes it's over here, sometimes it's over in his house. But yeah, I mean, a lot of times we're just kind of catching up. Sometimes it's video games, but that's kind of what we do. But anyway, we were talking today, and so Luke is having his father come up. Is it this month?
Coming up in the next probably 10 days, I'm having a hip surgery. Actually, in 2 days, full hip replacement.
And for some reason, he's talking about his dad, and I've heard him talk about his dad number of times, but I don't think I ever heard what his name was. I mean, like in my house, like nobody calls me by my name. It's just Daddy. There you go. But I was for some reason I was just kind of curious, like what was his dad's name? And so you told me.
Yeah, my dad's name's a lot of Williams in our line. My name is Lucas William. His name is William Douglas McKinnon. We've traced that back several generations. I couldn't count how many, but there is actually an interesting fact in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. There's a Father William McKinnon statue there in I believe might be the Spanish-American War. So, yeah.
That's cool. So Luke also had told me something about his dad going to the VA. And honestly, I don't think it ever come up in our conversations that his father was a veteran. So tell me about what he did.
Yeah, my dad was a Vietnam War vet and a Marine Corps. Believe he said 1967, but I'm not exactly sure on the dates. I haven't written them down, but yeah, Vietnam vet. He actually joined. He didn't get drafted. He thought it was the right thing to do. His father was a Marine Corps World War II vet in Saipan, so he thought it was the right thing to do and joined.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I mean, we're about the same age. I think technically, I'm guessing I'm a couple of years older.
I'm 45, going on 46 in May.
Yeah, so we're like a year-ish apart. But our dads essentially were in Vietnam around the same time. So you said your grandfather was in the Marines too.
Grandfather was Marine Corps, World War II Saipan, yeah.
So my grandfather was in the Navy during World War II, actually Korea and Vietnam. He did it. That was his career. But yeah, so I mean, very similar background that we didn't know that we shared up until tonight, which was kind of interesting. I mean, well, not kind of, it really is interesting. So I'm curious with these interview questions now that it's got my brain thinking, so the questions we're going to ask Luke are related to his father and some of that wisdom. And so I've got a list of, it's like 20 some odd questions or whatever. We'll probably not get to all of it. We're kind of free flow and kind of see where these questions take us or whatever. But I am kind of curious to see like how much of a similar experience hypothetically, we might have in ways that, our fathers have taken part in our lives and that type of stuff. So some of these are softball questions. Some of them aren't, super groundbreaking or whatever, but we'll just kind of start them off here. So number one, how important do you think having a father in life has been to you? How important do you think it is?
I think it is. I mean, any male influence, whether you didn't have fathers in your life, you're adopted or whatever. My mom and my dad got divorced when I was about 5 years old. So I had about that, actually only about a year gap between my mom meeting my stepfather and having that really positive male influence in my life there too, because my mom and dad split up and I didn't see my dad very often.
That's actually pretty similar to me. I think my parents got a divorce when I was 7, but my mother never remarried. She kind of did her own thing. And too, like your dad, my dad was always busy with work, and by the time I hit high school, he was actually working in Alaska, and he was working in other different places before that. So he wasn't a big part of my life. I mean, he was certainly at the periphery. You know, he would send me letters, and every once I'd get a call. Maybe he'd be in town. I certainly really treasured those times that we had together, but yeah, he wasn't around quite a bit. So to segue out of that, you know, with the limited amount of time that your dad had, I mean, did he ever give you any really good advice? And if he did, like, what was the best advice? So it was like the one thing that you kind of took away, distilled from all that information that he gave you, you know, whatever it was. What was like the one thing that's like always kind of stuck with you?
Don't really remember any advice other than to just, be yourself and try to go through the process. I mean, I think, took it upon myself to study hard, and I wanted to go to college. They didn't really say you should go. My mom went to community college for a little bit. My dad did as well, and they never finished. And either did my sister. So I was the only, graduating college bachelor's degree person in my immediate family, recent. So other than my stepdad, who graduated from the same university as me, Chico State University in California.
So whenever you graduated, was your dad proud of you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was probably really proud of me because, or at least I think so, because he had never took that opportunity to finish, and always worked kind of sales jobs like car salesman, boat salesman. He's a butcher by trade, as well as my grandfather. He was a butcher by trade. So something I wish I learned that I never learned was being a butcher and going through that hard work.
So that actually kind of is a great segue into my next question. What's the best skill that your father taught you? Or did he even teach you a specific skill?
Not that I recall. I mean, my stepdad, I always kind of, I was around him more, so I watched him a lot, and he was always a hard working businessman, worked sales for Procter & Gamble for about 40 years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I know he was in and out of the house here and there on sales stuff, but sometimes we got to go with him and go to San Francisco area and went to a Giants game or two here and there. And yeah, it's really cool.
So it sounded like he was pretty influential in your life. I mean, and to a certain degree, it sounds like, you guys probably had a decent relationship.
Had a really, really great relationship, I think. And, kind of put that in perspective over the last few years with things, and really kind of reached out to him and told him his influence on me.
So was there any kind of really good advice that he gave you, or maybe a skill that he might have taught you?
God, man, it's hard to think of a skill, or, I think I wanted to emulate him. And, if I ever had a family of my own, which I've never had, I've dated ladies with kids, and I thought I would always be able to be a good stepfather because I had that influence in my life.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, let me kind of, segue from that. I mean, being that your real dad wasn't in your life a lot, growing up, if your mother hadn't married your stepfather, do you think you would have ended up in the same position that you're in now?
Absolutely not. I mean, we moved to Chico when I was 8, and I remember early on, my parents, my stepdad and my mom, had a very big fight, and I thought we were moving back to Redding, California, where I grew up, and that was it, and we were done. And then, my mom was low income and all that, and I don't think we would have been the same.
So if we could bust out the magical crystal ball and kind of travel back in time, and I'm going to play the sound effect because I think it's cool. Oh yeah, we're going to travel back in time. If you could travel back in time and see yourself like on a different path without your stepfather, where do you think you might have ended up? I know this is a hard question but sometimes I think about this, as a thought exercise for myself. If something didn't happen, where would I have been?
Man, it's such a hard question. I don't know. I mean, I didn't know what I really wanted to do in high school going into college. I got a $500 scholarship because I got good grades to community college, Butte College in California, and used that and was like, you know what, my stepdad's in business. I'm going to do agriculture business because I don't know, for some reason it seemed like agriculture was a good field to get into. It was honest and, hardworking people. And then I realized I did not like accounting and numbers and the business aspect of all that. So I ended up going the science background and really wanted to go the science route and did agriculture science, got a degree in that. But looking back, shoot, if I wouldn't have had my stepfather in my life, I could have been doing a trade job or being stuck in some dead end job. I don't know. Definitely wouldn't be where I'm at now, being pretty successful and happy in life.
It's enlightening to hear you say that. I often wonder what would happen, and to what you said, I mean, I kind of feel like maybe that would be the same thing that happened to me. So whenever my parents were last married, we were living in Florida, and admittedly, I'll say the word redneck, not as a derogatory term, but more of a stereotype that can help you paint a picture. But it was kind of a redneck town, very small. So my father was in law enforcement at the time, and he was captain of the sheriff's department later on. My mother was city clerk for the town that we lived in, and she was an artist. There was not a lot of culture in the town. It was more just farming and peanuts and all kinds of other stuff. And so to this day, when I think of like maybe if they had stayed together, would I have essentially assumed this stereotype of being a redneck, being a farmer, whatever? Not that there's anything wrong with being a farmer, but would that have been where I'd went? Would we have just been that way? Or I don't know. It's interesting to see like these choices that our parents make that really define our lives in so many different ways. And so one of the things I see giving value in the show in interview sessions like this is trying to give people perspective on what we have learned and passing on that information, because, with your father not being around, what would have happened if he had been around? Would you have turned out differently, or could you have been better? I mean, honestly, I feel like your stepfather was an amazing resource for you. And while he's not your true biological father, I mean, he was pretty amazing. So it's not to say anything bad about your father, that I'm sure he was doing what he had to do. And a lot of times I think that fathers get a bad rap for doing exactly that like, I'm doing what I have to do. This is the only way I know how. So maybe some of this conversation sounds like, hey, you're pointing a bad finger at fathers, but in reality, it's just, you have to deal with what you're given, really.
Right.
It's both of us. You and I have both been married before previously, and both of those ended in a divorce. And you just kind of have to do what you have to do. So it's a rough gig for fathers everywhere. And, whenever we talk about fatherly advice and that type of stuff, the word father to me is more of an honorific. It's fatherly advice can come from anybody. Mothers, stepfathers, grandfathers, grandmothers, that type of stuff. It's really that word that we kind of use, but it definitely doesn't mean that you have to be a man. But anyway, let's keep on moving on. Do you regret, this is almost kind of redundant, but I think it's a good question to ask. Do you regret not having your father be a bigger part of your life? Now that we've talked about this, do you feel like you regret him not being a part of your life? Or do you feel like maybe this was the right path for you?
To me, since I don't know anything different, it probably was the right path, honestly. My dad bounced around cities a little bit. When I was 5, he moved to Aspen, Colorado, way far away from, where I grew up. Probably saw him a little bit in the summer for like a month in the beginning, and then he kind of moved around to Central California, about, 5 hours from where I was living. So I didn't get to see him very often. My stepdad was usually always there, and in fact, I have 2 stepbrothers and a stepsister that are his kids, and I saw them more than he saw his own kids. So I feel like he was the male influence in my life that was always there. If I had any want or need, it was met. So, yeah, I mean, I regret things that my own father wasn't there that we've definitely made up for probably in the last 15 or 20 years. That has definitely changed our relationship. And I was struggling with some stuff after my divorce and needed a little extra cash because I wasn't able to. Alaska's expensive if you don't know it, and
Yes, it is.
you definitely might need a little extra help, and he was my saving grace for a couple of years until I got back on my feet after my divorce. So, I mean, he's still there. It was just in a different time, so I think it was the right time to get that relationship back, and he knows and he regrets it, but that was, like you said, that's the way he had to do it to take care of himself, I guess.
Yeah. It's being a parent is kind of a rough gig. I'm going to steer away from some of these questions because honestly, I've wanted to ask you about this because it's something that you and I both have talked about of that kind of role reversal of like, we've been the kids all of our life, but at some point now we're kind of the adults. So I'm not going to say that I'm the adult in my father relationship or whatever, but it's certainly getting to that point where I'm not going to say that I have to get on to him or scold him or whatever, but I do have to remind him that he needs to take care of himself. And there's just certain things that are going on. And like from a family planning perspective, and I'm not saying family planning is in birth control, but, planning for what's going on in the family, making decisions. As our parents get older, we are kind of the parents and they're kind of the kids. And you've told me some interesting stories about how you've had to deal with your father. When I say deal, like, the things that you've had to do with him to kind of. Yeah. So could you tell us about that?
Well, yeah, he's like a typical. He's 73, I believe, and typical like old school. Nah, I don't have to go to the doctor. And I'm like, you got VA, it's covered. Go in there. I know VA is a nightmare on a lot of aspects, but it's there and it's covered for you because you served. And he'll go, nah, and then he'll wait, and then he'll get pneumonia, and then he's not doing well. And we worry about that because, they're older, and for those who don't know, I lost my mom 3 months ago to cancer. So, you got to take care of yourself and it's hard because like the role reversal, like you said, you just really realize that you got to be there and present in the moment and respect your parents because my mom had melanoma that, over that 10-year period, 3 different times, like had her for the 10 years.
Yeah.
And I had a melanoma removed, and I respect my mom that I need to go to a skin doctor every 6 months for the rest of my life to take care of myself. So, it is funny how you kind of do that role reversal. It slips. They take care of you as a kid, and you go to the exact opposite. You need to take care of your will, or you need to take care of this, which I have not done myself and need to take care of.
Yeah. I was on a podcast the other day and something came up. I think it was after the show. We were talking about podcasting in general and advice. And one of the things that I mentioned, it's not my quote by any means, but there's people that take advice and then there's people who make mistakes. And I'm definitely one of those ones who really tries to listen to advice because I hate making mistakes. And yeah, I mean, it's a painful lesson to learn, but one of the reason I guess I bring that up is one of the co-owners of my business. She's been my longtime boss. She recently lost her father. He passed away, I think it was in October. And, you know, for the past several years, she's been dealing with ongoing health issues with him, and then her mother as well. And her parents didn't really have a really good plan as far as like, should something happen, here's what's going on, and here's the healthcare thing. So it really stressed her out. But one of the things that makes her so amazing and why she's really my role model is that, you know, I'm going to very much say fatherly advice from her. And she's a woman, and I love her, and I think it's amazing that she gives us this information. But she was like, you know, you've got to do these things. You've got to have these things planned on, because this is what happens. And so for her, it was an eye-opening experience. And then she was going through all these steps and processes to make sure that she was going to have these things in place for her kids, because she didn't want to, you know, whenever and whatever, however that happens, that they don't have to go through the same thing that she did. And so for me, you know, she's given me all this great advice. And honestly, I mean, have I taken a lot of steps to make this happen? No. But it's pretty conscious in my head. You know, it's like on my mental to-do list, and I think about it on a regular basis. And will I get to it? Yeah, and hopefully soon. It's like creating wills. She made us do that. She was like, "You need to do this." Her husband's attorney, he got with us, and we did it. And I feel very thankful about it. And with COVID and all these other things that have happened, I'm like, geez, why didn't I do this? But, you know, I think you and I probably have the same mentality. In our minds, we're kind of like still 18 or 25 or whatever. And then we start looking at like, we're going to be 50 sometime soon. And it just seems really weird that time goes by so fast. And anyway, it really is weird of that role reversal. And then at some point, not for you because you don't have any kids, at least none that we know of. But I do. But at some point, you know, I've just got to assume that my kids are going to have to do the same things with me. And if I don't take care of things in advance and educate them and help them plan, then I'm going to leave them with a bad situation. So it's these types of conversations and education that I find invaluable, whether or not like we see the benefit of it doing it today. I mean, later on, it's a big deal. So anyway, so speaking of kids, I've got a question here about kids. Did your family want you to have kids early on or wait until later? What was their take on you having kids?
I think my definitely my dad, my biological father, always wanted me to carry on the McKinnon name. Right. You got to carry on the McKinnon name. You have to have a boy. So, and I got that earlier on when I was younger. And then, you know, I got married at 29, 30, and I thought I would have kids with my ex-wife, but we never got along well enough for me to want to bring a kid into this world. And coming from a broken home, you know, with a divorce, you know, mother and father, I didn't want to do that thing that I saw with them, which was my mom would always badmouth my dad.
Right.
He's a deadbeat father. He's not paying child support. And that's not right to do to your kids on any level. I mean, I saw it and I was like, well, my dad's a bad man because he's not meeting his obligations by, you know, paying for basic needs for me.
Right.
And it was terrible to see. And I think later on, I definitely had that conversation with my dad. You got bad mouthed by mom. You didn't pay child support. And he's all, I know this. And I regret that because that's why she bad mouthed me. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think parents should do that to their kids if they split up. You got to be separate from each other, respect that your kids are the most important part of it. and that you don't have to love each other after you get a divorce, but you should be friendly.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I mean, with my parents, there was so much animosity that it really caused the relationship with me and my father to not happen. And I'm not going to blame it on one particular person, because I certainly saw it from both sides, like my father having animosity towards my mother and her having animosity towards him. But it didn't help things. And I really wish that, like growing up and hearing people talk about like, oh yeah, my dad and my mother, they're not married, but they're not married together, but they have their own relationships or new marriages. And like, there's all these cool things that are happening. It's like, oh yeah, my dad's married, and like I can go stay with him for a few days of the week, and I've got this great room, and all these other different things. And it kind of seemed like a fairy tale to me that would never happen. Like, my dad drops me off like a block from the house. Or, my mother would never even get close to wherever my dad lived. And it was definitely like I hate to say this, but like a war zone. And somehow or another, I get shuffled across the DMZ, across the border. And that was just how it was. So, I mean, I feel that pain, that you just can't get along. And it's rough. So, I mean, I can see where you didn't want to have kids, but like where's your mind at right now? And I know that you are in a relationship. I'm not going to say with who or anything like that, but my understanding is that she has a kid who's not a kid. He's almost an adult.
Not a kid. He's a young adult. He's 18 going on 19, but kids today with this COVID and being in that time frame where you would have graduated high school, at that age, has really thrown that into a loop for her son, I think. And it's sad because I think we're having a lot of kids with no direction, seeing all the negativity, and I can't socialize with my friends in person. I can't. It's all like video or video chat or whatever. It's kind of a weird time. It's very, very weird time, even for us as adults.
Yeah.
The first 2 months of COVID was just probably the hardest of any of it because I was lost. I was like, what am I supposed to do? I hang out with you. I hang out with another friend of mine that's a really good friend here. And I socialize and drink beer and, do that type of thing. Also, one time a week nerd with Dungeons and Dragons at 45 years old, but that's okay. That's another story.
I'm a night elf mohawk.
But anyways, back to the topic. Remind me again.
Well, I think where I was wanting to steer this is, so with your girlfriend's son, is his father in the picture at all?
No, his father, very complicated. I'm not going to get into details or anything. But my girlfriend met her father or her ex in the military, and it was not a very good relationship. And so he doesn't know his father at all.
I'll say one thing and then I'll keep going on. I very much wanted to be in the military when I was a kid. But one of the reasons why I didn't go in, actually, it was probably the only reason why I didn't want to go in, is because I saw all these other military relationships and then my parents, and I didn't want that. So, and it's not to say that it couldn't happen and that military people cannot have a great relationship, but it was my perception, and I didn't want to take that chance. I just didn't. But, kind of just steering back to your girlfriend's son, I know that you and I have had some conversations where you've talked about, hey, here's what's going on, that type of stuff. Part of me, and I don't know if I asked you specifically, but have you thought more about like being more of a fatherly figure? I mean, let's put it this way. Your relationship has definitely gotten more advanced.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Especially considering, I guess the history that I know that you've had, with trying to find somebody really good and really compatible.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? I mean, like once maybe this process goes further and, you become more ingrained in each other's life, what do you say? What do you think as far as, let's put it this way. Maybe you haven't considered it. Maybe you have. Maybe I'm just a genius and I'm just putting together things. But what if you were like what if you were to him like what your stepfather was to you?
And I think I can or could be or can be, if it progresses the way it has. Every relationship has its challenges, but, we work it out usually and are pretty good with it. So, yeah, I think so. I mean, this kid's kind of lost, and I don't know how you direct someone that is very lost right now. He's going for his GED, wants to get that done, but he wants to move to Texas with his girlfriend.
Right.
That he's met online or has been with online or whatever, however you call that, for the last, year or so. But he's directionless. He's unmotivated because what you see in society right now seems to be a lot of unmotivation, and people just want to not work. I don't know if they don't want to work or just makes it easier not to work because you're getting paid more.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you and I talked about was, if we were in that position, we were that age, would we do the same thing? And for me, probably. So, but
yeah,
I think if your relationship with your girlfriend keeps going the way it's going, you might have a really good opportunity to influence this guy into trying to make a better decision. Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, sitting across from you, it sounds like your stepfather did some amazing things for you.
For sure.
And, looking back at it, if he wasn't there, maybe you wouldn't have had the opportunities and the lifestyle that you enjoy now. And maybe you could help him along that path. So I'm not throwing down a gauntlet and challenging you, Luke McKinnon, to help this kid get further down the road in a better way. But I implore you to think about it.
I feel like I'd love to give him that opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, advice is hard to give to people. I mean, some people, like I said, they take advice, and then there's some people that just want to make those mistakes on their own. I'm sure that's not their perception. They're like, no, it's not going to happen to me. And then it kind of happens. Let's see. What else have we got here? So we need to do a time check. We're 37 minutes in, so I think we've got a couple more questions in here. So one of the things that you and I talk about quite often is pop culture, movies, and televisions. Televisions, not just one television, multiple televisions. So the question is, there's a tendency for father figures to be portrayed as absent or negatively in Hollywood. Do you think this holds true in real life? And why or why not? And so what my thought process, I'll give you the Disney theory. I've heard this before. It's not my original theory. But almost all of the Disney movies, the dad is absent because the dad was evil. In so many instances. So there's really kind of this anti-father kind of vibe in a lot of different things where, my father this and my father didn't do this. And, he was bad and he was bad. And so to me, watching these TV shows, I'm not saying that these things aren't possible, but I don't feel a lot of good vibes coming from media and television and movies about how good a fatherly relationship can be. I just think it's kind of underrepresented that fathers can be amazing people, may be amazing influence in their lives. I'll give you a good example. Like most movies and divorces, they portray fathers negatively, and the mother is always the good one, and the father is just a deadbeat dad. So do you think that kind of holds true to real life? Do you think that is most people's perception of how fathers are. And I'm not looking for like a right or wrong answer. I'm just more of perception and opinion.
Yeah, I think a lot of male influences are portrayed negative, definitely. I mean, you look at broken homes and all that. Why did the father leave? It's always the father. Father, father, father. And I didn't have that because I had a stepdad that my mom met and started dating not about a year after my mom and dad divorced. They were together and living with each other in about a year and a half. I don't know. It might have been a year. They got married 3 years later and got married and, you know, and till my mother passed away recently. We're married all the way up till then. So, yeah, I think they are. I don't know why that is. It's pretty unfair, I think, to see that because maybe we're too masculine or they're too masculine and they're not showing the same, I don't know, the mother. I don't know. I don't know where I'm going.
It sounds like where you're going is that men just typically don't talk about their feelings, and maybe those stories aren't being told, that, men have feelings too, and that, we're not all rough and tough and, macho, whatever. I mean, we love, we cry. Crying is certainly a taboo subject for most guys. They typically won't admit to it. But I think it's gotten better. I think people have gotten more, I guess, open. Men have gotten more open to expressing their feelings. But, on the flip side, I think there's a lot of still negativity towards men sharing their feelings. I hear the P word thrown around, if some guy's saying his feelings or whatever.
Right.
And I'm not trying to turn this into some kind of specific rant about whatever. Really, really where I'm going with this is, how can we be better? How can we be more positive role models and kind of go against this possible stereotype? I don't know. It's to me, I want to be the best father I can be and be positive and try to help people. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, one of the things I say is I'm a helper. That's what I want to do. Now, maybe I can't help everybody all the time or whatever, but it's certainly in my heart that, I just want to help people. And honestly, I think a lot of people, especially fathers, really want to help other people. I can't say how many times I've seen random father helping somebody, get their vehicle off the side of the road, or giving somebody advice, or I don't know. I see these random acts of fatherness from time to time, and to me, it's pretty powerful because I think me more than you, having that absence of having a father in your life is I'll give you one of my favorite quotes of all time. It's from Borman's, the movie Excalibur, the one from the late 70s, early 80s, somewhere around there, or whatever. I think it was King Arthur talking after he's come out of this spell, and he said, "I didn't realize how empty my heart was until it was filled." And so for me, I kind of get chills just even saying it, thinking about it. But seeing the love of what a father can do for his family or other people, or just that type of camaraderie, whatever you want to call it, like, it's filling to me because I've had so little of it throughout my life. So yeah, and I'm not blaming fathers for not being whatever. Again, I just want to keep pushing that good vibes only vibe of how can we be better? How can we help each other? And I think this conversation is going to help people. It's helped me so far. It's given me a lot of understanding. So thanks.
Stop telling men that they are peas consistently for showing feelings, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the start.
I'd see that. Let's see. We kind of went down to a deep rabbit hole there. It's kind of hard to come back from that one. Let's see. If you could ask your father right now if he was proud of you, what do you think he would say and why?
He's told me he's proud. He says it all the time.
But why is he proud of you? Is it just because you're his son, or is it some kind of like, is it one of these things like, look, you've done things that I should have done and maybe I didn't, or you've accomplished things that I never could or I didn't, or
I mean, it's partially that. I would say, I completed college, something he didn't do. I worked my way up to a government job, which I always thought, if I got in that field, there's no pensions out there anymore for most people.
Yeah.
I have a government pension coming to me after I retire. And as well as, the thrift savings plan, which is the government's 401k. So I got that, a pension, and that makes me definitely a bigger advantage compared to most people. And he didn't have that. He was working job to job on commission and kind of didn't really save for himself very well. I had grandparents that, gifted him his childhood home that he sold recently. So he took that and whatever he had. And, he gets, I think he's 90% disability, but that doesn't cover everything.
Yeah.
He didn't have any advice other than I think I took it upon myself to be better equipped than him to really think through that and get to where I'm at. And I think I'll be covered, into my retirement years.
If I asked my dad now if he was proud of me, he would say yes. I think the other day he told me that I don't know if he actually used the word proud, but whatever he said, it was basically that sentiment, that he was proud of me. And I think it's more, it's not because of what I don't think like I've accomplished anything specifically worldly, like, this, that, or whatever. I think it's probably just the global thing. But honestly, I think when it comes down to it, like if there was one thing that I could pin it on, it's family. Like he's proud of like my marriage to Julie and our kids and how well they've turned out. I think that's really kind of the only thing that's really mattered to him, which is kind of strange for me to even postulate at the moment because, me growing up, he was always telling me, you got to do this, you got to do that. Don't do this. That's stupid. And, don't be an idiot, do that. And that type of stuff. And yeah, I guess to most of what he said, I guess I wasn't that much of an idiot. But I will say that I've been pretty solid and consistent. I may not have climbed like mountains, but I certainly didn't. When I fell down, I didn't fall like completely off the mountain. Like it took me down a couple notches. Like my divorce was probably the lowest point in my life, somewhere around there. And I made dumb mistakes during that point in time. Not all dumb mistakes, but I was confused. And I think he tried to be there for me, but maybe I didn't let him. I don't know. I think I've always had that kind of independence, but yeah. I mean, but for me, I mean, I'm proud of my kids. Yeah. No matter what they do, as long as they're not something horrible, like a horrible person or rude, like that's probably like one of the main things. I do not want my kids to be rude. If you're going to be a cutthroat business person or whatever, at least don't be rude. Be nice. Try to be helpful. Yeah. So maybe one other last question here. This is this is interesting. Was your father supportive of your dating choices? In general. And before you answer, I'll give you my take on this. My dad thought that I was an idiot whenever I was dating in high school. He was like, that's wrong and she's wrong and what are you doing? Stop being an idiot and what and why? And there was this one time one of I think it was late at night and was asking for me, and he put a gun in this girl's face because she was beating down the door. I mean, I've made dumb choices, but one of the one things that he was supportive of at the end of my dating experience, because now me and Julie have been married like almost 15 years, or maybe it has been. Good thing she doesn't listen to my podcast. Was, hey, what about Julie? And at that point in time, I didn't see her as my type, and he kept asking, and something was telling me like, maybe you should consider this. Like, he doesn't say this on a regular basis. And sure enough, I did, and it was great advice, and yeah, she's been the best one in my life, and it was kind of due to him pestering me, making me get out of my comfort zone or look outside the box or whatever was going on in my mind. So, yeah, he was he was not supportive of my dating choices all the way up until the end. It's not to say he didn't have a relationship or try to like the girls I was dating, but it definitely wasn't his choice. Like, he didn't like those people, or maybe not like them as much, or didn't think they were a great fit.
I didn't really bring anyone around my dad. I mean, because my dad was living outside of town on occasion. Obviously spent some time around my ex-wife, and
what did he think of her?
Yeah, I don't know. They come out of the woodwork when you're getting a divorce or after you're divorced and kind of tell you. I know some people are like that.
Well, I'm just curious what he thought in the beginning.
I don't know. He thought,
oh, she's a nice girl.
I guess, or they just were indifferent and didn't really want to tell me. I don't know, because they knew I was stubborn enough to want to make my own decision and not listen to anyone, probably. So, I mean, it was probably that. I know after the woodwork, they come out and they go, hey, why'd you marry her? Blah, 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 blah. And, obviously at one point I was in love with her, and I thought that could continue and maybe get better, but it didn't work out. So there we are.
Yeah, it's, what you're saying, like maybe they just didn't want to be honest with you about your relationship. I guess I'm glad that my dad was bluntly honest with my relationship, but it didn't help that I didn't listen to him, because I just didn't. I don't think I ever did. At that point, I was like, what do you know? You don't know about what I like and what I don't like. And, you don't know her well enough. And I'll still defend that perspective. He didn't know. He didn't know everything. But I guess it's that innate ability for an older person to use stereotypes, experience information, and come up with an idea of like, is this a good person or not? Like, my dad says, they're good people. He'll say that. He's like, they're all right. They're cool. They're good people. He'll say that. When he gives you the good people seal of approval, like, they're good. Like, that's as good as it gets. He never really gave me the good people seal approval with. I think he might have given my ex-wife that to a certain degree. But her father's name was Richard. So everybody called him Dick, and he was like, I can't do that. He's like, he called him good people, and he really is. He's, for a father-in-law, he was amazing. But anyway, before we sign off for this episode of You're Not My Father, Luke, is there any other piece of advice or wisdom, no matter what it is, as long as it's PG rated, that you'd like to give our listeners about some kind of advice? Or maybe a story that you think might be relevant that could help somebody?
A relevant story. Tell you what, I would say I moved up here originally in 2008, and I'm just going to tell you, I left everything in California, family, friends that I'd known for forever.
Yeah.
Came up here. Me and my ex-wife weren't doing now ex-wife weren't doing very well at the time. We were still married. I came up here for about 3 weeks, went to the academy for the job I'm now in. Actually, this is a second stint with this job. First stint didn't work out. I lost the job. Within 3 weeks, had a plane ticket home with no job, and had to rely on my wife at the time, who up until that point had been the main breadwinner, covered all the bills, and now I was very scared how we were going to cover everything. And I was off for about 3 weeks before I ended up getting a temporary job, part-time job. And then I worked my way back in. I reapplied for the job I have now, and it took me 5 years full circle to get it back. So I would say, if there's any advice, if you have roadblocks, reapply for whatever you want, or try to go back for whatever you want, or something like that. Have a path and work your way back towards it. I didn't think it was going to happen. I was nervous about that. Thought I was going to have to go back to school for a master's degree. And I ended up I don't know, the P word, persevering, I guess, and going through that.
Not the other P word.
Yeah, not that P word. Persevering and making my way back towards what I wanted. And don't let people tell you that you can't get what you want, if you really work towards it. And I use that as a roadmap to really just say, no, I lost that job. I want that job.
Right.
And luckily I was able to get it back. And I would say, just go for it. Really, really, really pursue that and get back to where you get what you want, I don't know if that's fatherly advice, but, from a perception, but I am a man, so that would be a fatherly advice thing if I had kids.
I think that definitely counts. That is pretty powerful advice. From my perspective, I don't think I would have done it. I think that after, maybe not me of today at this moment, but if you'd asked me that, or if I'd been put in that position 10 years ago or any time before that, I'd just been like, give up. I just wouldn't have done it. Yeah. So, that's pretty powerful advice. It really is. You kept going back to it and you got it.
Everyone told me you should move home. You should move home. You should do this. You're getting a divorce, everything else. I'm like, no, I want to be up here. I left California for a reason. And that was to start over, do something more than I had ever done before, just to take a chance.
So you heard it here first. Persevere. Actually, you heard it here first if you've been listening to this episode in the last hour. I don't know if that was funny or not, but anyway, I'm going to stick with it. You heard it here first. Thank you to my good friend Luke McKinnon for being on my podcast. This has been amazing, informative, and I know you were like, I don't know if I want to be on this podcast, but I'm sure somebody's going to have listened to this and was like, thank you. That helped. So I think it did. I think it definitely did help.
First time podcaster, probably not the only time though.
Right. I'm sure I'll have you back on. So with that, this ends this episode of You're Not My Father. Be sure to subscribe and get your weekly dose of You're Not My Father. We're available wherever fine podcasts are sold, given away, rented, leased. That's Apple, Google, Spotify, Anchor, and more. And if you found this podcast useful, please spread the word on your social media. Tell your friends, your pets, anybody else who listen, even the garbage man down the street. He enjoys a good podcast too. You can also follow us on Facebook.com/YNMF show. And that's it for us at YNMF. Remember, if you're a fan of us, then we're a fan of you. Take it easy, stay positive, and remember, good vibes only.